You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Good morning, I'm Chrissie De Clerck-Szilagyi.
And I'm Jason Szilagyis with today's Caffeinated History with the Szilagyis on the BQN Podcast Collective.
Before we jump into our topic for the day, we'd like to take a moment to thank our BQN Patreon patrons who make our show possible. Listeners, you can hear your name listed here as one of our associate producers with a monthly subscription of just $10 at patreon.com/BQN. And with a monthly Patreon subscription of $5 or more, you can join our Star Trek script table reads and other fun activities with your collective. Watch your Patreon messages for details. Today's topic is Da Vinci's Last Supper. This topic was inspired by a recent episode of License to Spiel, on which I was invited to discuss the movie The Da Vinci Code. If one man embodies the European Renaissance, it is Leonardo da Vinci. He is best known for his artwork, but like so many of his contemporaries, he was also a natural philosopher, a scientist, an inventor, and a writer. He is said to have disliked painting, but did it to pay the bills for his other interests. One of his most famous works is The Last Supper, a wall painting depicting the Passover meal shared by Jesus of Nazareth and the apostles shortly before his arrest and crucifixion. The work was commissioned in 1495 by Ludovico Sforza, originally as a decoration for the family mausoleum. The building instead ended up as part of a monastery, in which the painting fills one wall of the refectory, or dining hall. It measures 15 feet 1 inch by 28 feet 10 inches, or 460 by 850 centimeters. It is painted directly onto a stone wall that was sealed and coated with a layer of white lead paint. It is not, like so many paintings of the era, a fresco, a long-lasting method in which the paint is applied to wet plaster. Instead, the colors are primarily tempera, pigments mixed with egg yolk as a binding agent to create a vivid color that dried quickly, but could also be worked over when and if Da Vinci wanted to make changes. Such paints were commonly used on wood panels, but were not suited to walls. Da Vinci worked on the painting over 3 years, sometimes with long periods between work. His journals include many studies and sketches of faces. He wanted to depict each man in just the right way, and based on people he saw in Milan. It was particularly difficult for him to find an appropriate example for Judas, and he spent many days walking the streets of the city looking for a face that appeared sufficiently evil. When the prior of the monastery complained about the inconsistent work, Da Vinci offered to speed up the process by using the prior's face as a model for Judas. The image captures the moment immediately after Jesus has announced that he is aware of imminent betrayal from one amongst the group. All of the men appear shocked by the revelation, and some seem to foreshadow later events in which they will take part. Judas is withdrawn, holding a small money bag, perhaps the down payment on his coming actions. Peter holds a knife, mirroring the sword he will later wield in the Garden of Gethsemane. And Thomas raises his index finger as if to ask a question, foreshadowing his doubt over the resurrection. The painting was finished on the 9th of February in 1498. Due to the materials used, it began to decay quickly. Thankfully, at least 2 oil copies were made on canvas shortly after its completion, which allowed for later restorations and a clearer view of Da Vinci's original work. These were important to restorations attempted in the 1720s and 1770s, though these were not completed. The refectory was used as a stable by French soldiers during the Napoleonic Wars and was badly flooded in the first decade of the 19th century. In 1821, an attempt was made to remove the whole painting by Stefano Baresi, an expert in restoring and moving frescoes, but the center portion was damaged before he realized it was not a fresco. A careful study was done in the first decade of the 20th century, and plans were made for cleaning and restoration. These were continued intermittently through the 1920s. The building was heavily damaged by Allied bombing during the Second World War, but a protective barrier had been built to encase the wall, meaning the damage to the painting itself was minimal. Attempts at restoration over the next 3 decades sometimes did a great deal more harm than good. In 1978, the efforts were taken over by Panine Brambilla Barcelone. Her first task was to stabilize the painting itself and the environment. Since it could not be removed, a sealed and climate-controlled space was built around it. This began the long process of cleaning, removing earlier attempts at restoration, and returning it to as close as the original as possible. Some areas did have to be replaced entirely, repainted with a slightly different color so that viewers will understand which pieces are the more modern work. When it was finally revealed in 1999, many people criticized her work, claiming that she had destroyed the original, but such condemnation has reduced in the time since. In the last few decades, the painting has gained considerable attention due to unfounded interpretations about the messages Da Vinci intended to convey. These primarily center around the idea that the artist hid clues about Jesus' marriage to Mary Magdalene, even to the point of including her in place of one of the apostles, John. The main point of supposed evidence for this is that John appears feminine. This ignores Da Vinci's known tendency to blur gender lines in his work. There is no explanation within these theories as to why Mary Magdalene could not have been included as herself, nor why John would have needed to be removed. In the end, there is little basis for the idea, but it has taken hold in popular culture primarily due to the work of novelist Dan Brown, whose Da Vinci Code became a bestseller shortly after its 2003 publication and was made into a movie in 2006. Today, the painting is available for viewing through the Museo del Cenacolo Vinciano in Milan. I'm sorry for butchering all the Italian. Thank you for listening. We'd also like to thank our History with the Szilagyis Patreon patrons, Pati, Susan Capuzzi-De Clerck, Laura Dull, Kris Hill, Betty Larson, and Vince Locke. Their contributions help us to have the time to research and write what you're hearing. You can help us just like they do and hear your name listed here with a monthly subscription of as little as $5 at patreon.com/historywiththeszilagyis. Also, thank you to Mark White for the awesome short and Zach Tripp for the wonderful closing music. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast player and don't forget to rate and review us there as well. And while you're at it, check out the rest of the great shows on the BQN Collective. We'd also love to hear what you think. If you'd like to reach out, you can find our network on Twitter and the other socials at BQN Podcast, and this podcast in particular at History Szilagyi. You can also talk about any and all of the BQN podcasts in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, and our Discord server. And last but not least, you can find me on the socials at The Goddess Livia. That's TheGoddessLivia.
And me at Jason Dark Elf. We'd love to hear topic suggestions. What would you like to learn on Caffeinated History?